all of us have to be engaged in that effort. And Cliff, I'm asking you, because you're representing Black Voters Matter and we do matter, how do we have our voices heard in this process of coming up with a new map?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked that, because we actually, much the way Evan was talking about, in several states, part of what we did during the redistricting process was to have community forums and to provide software where folks could actually participate in creating their own maps, and not just at the congressional level, even at the local level, right? What do you think is a fair map in your city council districts, right? And so that process has to continue now, especially has continued now, because as we've all said, this has got to be a process where everybody is feeling attached, everybody is letting their voice be heard, everybody is providing feedback. And so it's incumbent, and it's really a testimony to what we know about our movements in history, right? We need a combination of strategies. We need a legal strategy, right? But we also need an organizing strategy. And things work best when those things go together. A lot of people talk about the Montgomery bus boycott like it was just a boycott that ended segregation on the Montgomery buses, but there was a whole case that made it to the Supreme Court, Browder versus Gale, which was what actually legally ended it, but it would not have happened without the bus boycott happening simultaneously, right? And so we've got to be doing these legal cases and litigation, but we also got to be organizing our folks. There were a couple just real quick points I wanted to make to Jerome's point, and several people have touched on this, because I actually, and we have what some may consider a controversial position, because we think certainly Black voting age population is a starting point, but that's not really enough for all the reasons that Marcia was talking about, right? So really we have to look at what does actual turnout numbers look like to really decide what's what's a registration number like? Because at the end of the day, some people say, and I say it's controversial because they say, well, you're trying to reward your community that's not voting enough, right? But when we know that there are structural reasons that Marcia was talking about why we're not, it's not just that we sit on the couch and we just not motivated. We talked about, Doug Jones talked about the voter ID. There's the felony disenfranchisement. There's the economic reasons. There's all these things. So when you know those barriers exist, just looking at the voting age population isn't even enough. Right, but it is a potential starting point. And then the last thing I just want to say quickly, and it's not a small point, because you talked about how you're an impacted party in all this, and that's not a small point, because it would be easy, and there have been representatives, congressional or otherwise, local level, who in some of these discussions they'll accept the status quo because they'd rather be in a 70% safe district. You know that your district, once you say that there's going to be 2 Black districts, that means I might lose some folks but you have been a champion on this issue in this state and otherwise. And that's not a small thing, and I didn't want to bypass that.